Later, they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians to Jesus to catch him in his words. They came to him and said, "Teacher, we know that you are a man of integrity. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it right to pay the poll tax to Caesar or not? Should we pay or shouldn't we pay?" But Jesus knew their hypocrisy. "Why are you trying to trap me?" he asked. "Bring me a denarius and let me look at it." So they brought the coin, and he asked them, "Whose image is this? And whose inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. Then Jesus said to them, "Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." And they were amazed at him.
Well, I suppose it's easy to be critical at the government. So there's a whole string of newspapers, and let me tell you, I don't know, their professional job is to just tear down the government. I mean, this is what they do religiously. What has happened? Doesn't matter what it is, it's going to be painted ill. But I suppose we really could be critical of a number of things from a Christian perspective in particular. So, for instance, I have down some things that I think are troublesome. Maybe the historic and the endemic mistreatment of minorities. Go and look at history. We'll see that the government has historically mistreated minorities and that there are still lingering problems in this area. Or the recent mistreatment of the elderly during this COVID crisis. Many older people who came down with the virus were just simply told to go home. We're not going to treat you. And we didn't need to do that. We actually had room to treat everyone if we had so desired. And so that was terrible. Or the undervaluing of students in poorer districts, their academic integrity, right? No, they didn't really get an A. They got something else because they were born in the wrong place. Or a policy on abortion. We can look at what's going on with Northern Ireland right now. That's problematic. Or the seemingly slant that the BBC puts on some of their programming that takes things in a direction that we might feel quite uncomfortable with. Even that's morally not good. Or the continued silence with the immoral business practices of our business partners, our international business partners, like China. It's mistreating its own people. It's mistreating Hong Kong. It's mistreating Christians. And it's mistreating the Uyghur people, but they're big business partners. Okay, so it seems like we have some moral problems here, some real problems. Now, some might say, they might look at all this immorality, and they might say, shall I even pay money into that system? You know, do I really have to pay taxes? Because now I'm contributing to at least some of that bad stuff, right? They might even say it's wrong for them to pay taxes because they shouldn't join with those doing evil in their evil doing, and giving money would be that. Okay, so what does this have to do with our text this morning? This is the tricky situation that they're throwing on Jesus this morning. This is the trap that Jesus encounters. Okay, the Pharisees are trying to trap Jesus with this tricky question. And the question is, how do you treat this corrupt Roman government? Shall we even give them any honor at all? And Jesus says, part one, money shouldn't really be the issue, and it is. Part one, money really shouldn't be the issue, but let's just be honest, it is. And then he says, yes, actually, even the corrupt, we need to give due reverence. There's good and there's bad. We can give reverence for the good, but we have an ultimate authority. We have an ultimate authority, and we need to give ourselves to that. So give to each their due, but especially give yourself constantly to God. Give to each their due. Give to each their honor, but especially and particularly give yourself to God constantly. So let's just examine this idea first by looking at the tricky trap question that we have here, and also how money shouldn't be the issue, but it actually is. At the end of the day, it's really about wealth and possessions and retaining it. So let's pick up in verse 13, and we'll just read through the first part of verse 15. Later, they sent some of the Pharisees and the Herodians to Jesus to catch him in his words. They came to him and said, "Teacher, we know that you're a man of integrity. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it right to pay the poll tax to Caesar or not? Should we pay or shouldn't we?" But Jesus knew their hypocrisy. "Why are you trying to trap me?" A little background. We've seen that the Pharisees and the leaders of the temple, the high priests, they came directly to Jesus and they challenged his authority. They thought, this is going to be a slam dunk. We're going to silence this man. And Jesus turned right around and put them in their place. And it was a shocking moment because they're not being faithful to their own perceived truth, what they claim to be true. They don't live up to their own religious claims. We find this happens with people. Apart from God, we make religious claims that we cannot live up to. And Jesus just comes along and says, you're not really faithful to what's here at all. And so they decide to change tactic. There's egg on their face. This is embarrassing. And so they send an incognito rep. Okay, here comes the representative that's in hiding. He's dressed in normal attire. Have you been on the tube or the overground or the bus and you're sitting there and somebody walks up and says, ticket, right? And you look at them and you say, wait, you're the ticket master? I mean, you're so poorly dressed. How could that be? Yeah, I mean, you just look like a normal lad. This is really? Yeah, and then they have the machine and you realize that you've been duped. They wanted to get you to relax so they could just catch you at a moment when your guard is down. This is what is happening with Jesus, except for more sinister. You really ought to pay your tickets, friends, for the bus ride. But here, they're trying to catch Jesus unfairly. And they begin by buttering him up. You smash it, Jesus. You're brilliant. Your integrity feels. You don't let people sway you. Oh, easy question. Taxes or no taxes? Have you ever been praised by a stranger? It is a weird moment. A weird thing that happens. I suppose as a pastor, you might get some praise on occasion for something that someone saw online, now that everything is online. But very rarely, someone decides to praise you and you don't really know them. And you know what happens? You look at them, you go, all right, what do you want? What is this really about? And so this is how we begin. Shall we or shan't we pay taxes? Easy question. Yes or no? Just give us an answer. And it seems fairly innocuous, doesn't it? So quick. Just spit out an answer. Just don't even think about it. Just give me an answer. But it's got a loaded history. This is a big issue. So the Roman army, essentially, they pulled out a map with money symbols on it. Who has money? Okay. And then they got their armies and they went and they pillaged that place. But when they pillaged it, they didn't say, well, now that we've taken your goods, we're going to go. They planted down their army right there. And they said, actually, we want installments on pillaging forever. Okay. We're here to stay. You're going to pay us for having bothered to come and visit you and hurt you for as long as we can get away with this. And so they would install dictators and they would set up pillage installments. And this is what the poll tax is here. Should we pay this poll tax? It's just one of these embarrassing installments. Imagine if we were to, finish our trade talks and we are so desperate with the European Union that we said, okay, we're going to pay you $4 billion a year for the next 35 years, okay? That every year when we got to the point of payment, it would just, the grumbling would begin. Oh, I can't believe we signed this contract. Or 4 trillion, maybe 4 trillion is a better number. I don't know. To make it worse, the poll tax was a particular coin. It was a different coin than the coins that they had in Israel. The coins they had in Israel, there was a different form of currency that we're going to need to purchase. And on that silver coin, there was a picture of a man, Caesar. And under that picture, it said, this guy is a god, worship him. That's what it said. Here is a god on earth, Caesar. And of course, that would be highly offensive to someone who believes in one God. So now you have this moral problem. And then further still, you've got the Romans who are atrociously immoral. Actually, the whole of the world, the known world for the Jewish people, would have been terribly immoral in comparison to what they would have believed in. It's actually astounding because we are a Christian nation, quote unquote. And what that means is we have the vestiges of the Christian principles and the principles from the Old Testament in our legal system. So the idea that we treat each other equally, that comes from the Bible. That wasn't just made up somewhere. That's straight out of the Bible. And the idea that there's justice and that a crime and its punishment should fit and not be overboard. These are all revolutionary thoughts. And if you were to look at Roman or Greek society and to look at how they lived, it would be appalling for you. You would be beyond shocked at what they thought was absolutely okay. Just this week, I was talking about this. The Romans, they thought, if you have a child and you don't want to take care of that child anymore, just throw that child out somewhere. Go to the nearest cliff and just throw that kid off. No need to explain yourself. It was appalling the way they lived. They were perverse in ways that we can't even imagine. And for the Jewish person living in Israel, it was like, why, God, have you allowed Satan and his government to come here and be in charge of us? This is awful. That was the value system, and that's how people felt. And so the average Israeli was appalled that the Romans were in charge, and they were even more convinced that they would have to pay a tax. Shouldn't we or shan't we pay this tax? In fact, they were so offended that a whole group of them, called the Essenes, they just went out in the desert. You can't tell us what to do. So they hid out in the desert. And then another group called the Zealots, there's two of those in Jesus's disciples, they would say, oh, I'm against the government. It's a secret, though. And then during the night, they would know who the officials from Rome who were, or who worked with the officials from Rome, and they would go and they would murder them in the covering of dark. So this is a sharp issue, and this is the trap, okay? If Jesus says, yes, pay the tax, he's aligning himself to all the bad people doing the bad things and making us pay for it. But if he says no, all those bad people have now got a reason to see him as seditious and to get rid of him. So Jesus, go ahead, just tell us yes or no. Now, listen, this issue is very relevant for us today. Every year, the governments of Europe become less and less oriented and grafted towards the Bible. Every year, we move away from the system that we had, where we treat people with integrity, we treat them as equals. These things are slowly being eroded at. And so what should we do? How should we respond? What should we think of the government now? How do we be salt and light? How do we be in the world, but not be of the world? And shall we pay taxes? So that's the trap. Now let's talk about how money shouldn't really be the issue, but it is. Okay? So the chief priests and the Herodians, they're not so innocent when they ask this question. It's not like they're asking, we found something that you're a failure at, but we're not a failure at. They're total failures in this category. They're very, very greedy. And so it says here, Jesus, knowing their hypocrisy, that knowing that they're being fake, he starts to go at this. Okay, let's talk about what's really going on. So the chief priest asked himself this question and had to answer it honestly before the people. It would cause them to be in significant trouble. Why? Well, it turns out that they got their job from the Romans. And how did they get their job from the Romans? They sat before the proconsul of Judea, and they said, listen, we will pay more for this job. We'll pay you more than these other people will. We'll give you the highest amount of money to take this job. And so that's how they got their job. They sold out to the Romans. Now, just for comparison, there were people in Israel called tax collectors during this time of day. And the tax collector basically was somebody who was an Israelite, okay? He sold out his own people. He worked with the Romans, And the Romans would say, right, we want this amount of taxes from you and everything else you can keep. And he would go and persecute his own people and make them pay exorbitant funds so that he could live a lavish lifestyle off of the extra income. And they universally hated tax collectors for this reason. They were sellouts. They were traitors. By the way, one of them is famous in our Bible. His name is Matthew, okay? Jesus says to one of these tax collectors, come on in. His name is actually Levi, is his Jewish name. Come on in. I will make you part of the kingdom. And he says, what? Me? I've sold myself out. And he comes in. He becomes a disciple. But they hated the tax collectors. Well, guess what? The chief priests, and certainly the Herodians, and very likely the Pharisees, they're nothing more than glorified tax collectors themselves. How did the high priest get his payments so that he could give back to Rome? Well, he invented something called the temple tax. The temple tax, if you were going to visit the temple, you had to pay a tax. And out of the lavish funds they took in from the temple tax, they lived luxurious lives. And some of that money they gave back to Rome. And they developed this theology, and the theology goes something like this. The reason for following God is because you will get rich. You will be successful. You will live the life of your dreams. You won't be sick. You won't be in need. They developed this false gospel. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Is it the case that actually in our churches we have this very same notion floating about? The health and wealth gospel. Yeah, the problem with Jesus is that he's interfering with their money train. But we have this false gospel, the prosperity gospel, that tells you that if you come and you have enough faith, you're going to be rich, you're going to be wealthy, you're never going to suffer. You know, the gospel, for people who believe in it, some people do get rich, some people do never have things like cancer, some people do never have to face tragedy, but that's not guaranteed by your faith. The thing that is guaranteed by faith is actually that you're going to suffer for it. If you choose to follow Christ, you're going against the grain of the culture, and you're going upstream against the culture, and it is painful. You will suffer in life if you desire to follow Christ. Not get rich, have a great time, have whatever you want, amass possessions as high as the sky. The possessions that you amass are heavenly. The treasure that you amass will last forever. It will not necessarily be here on earth. Now, here's something interesting. As bad as the leaders look, the people who are refusing to pay the taxes have the same problem that the leaders do. Why? Well, they have this great reason that they're not going to pay the taxes. I'm not going to pay taxes. Why? Because the government is corrupt. And that's just a smokescreen. The real reason they don't want to pay taxes is because they want to hold on to their money. Okay? That's why you don't want to pay taxes. You want to hold on to your cash. The cash that the government printed. You know? Okay. Anyway, just that slight hesitation there. The cash that the government is supplying you, made for you. I want to hold on to this. I can't let it go. My wife has said, and she's absolutely right, okay, that I am dirt cheap. I'm cheap. She didn't use the word dirt cheap. I'm cheap, really cheap. Here's how cheap I am. Okay. When I want something expensive, I will not buy it. What? Because it costs too much. I don't want to spend my money, but you know what? I want somebody else to buy it. Okay. So what I do is for my birthday or for Christmas, I tell all of my relatives so they can all chip in a little bit and get me the expensive thing that I'm not willing to buy. So I want to hold on to my money. Because I believe this appalling thought that if I just amass more possessions and more wealth, then I'll be truly happy and safe. And that's what I really need at the end of the day. And this is an idol, and this is a lie. Money is paper with ink on it. Money cannot solve the world's problems. Money is just a tool in its time. It's just a tool for its time. Okay, so we've seen the trap. We've seen that behind the trap, money is the problem. Let's look at Jesus' response. Jesus isn't really interested in the money. He says, yes, give due. Give due to the government, give to those it's owed, but also he says, give to God. Make sure you give to God over and over, continually. Look at verse 15, the second part of verse 15. Bring me a denarius and let me see it. They brought the coin. He asked them, whose image is this? And whose inscription? Caesar's, they replied. Then Jesus said to them, give back to Caesar what's Caesar's, and to God what is God. So the first thing that Jesus does is he uncovers their hypocrisy. Okay, so he says to the people who ask this question, oh, give me one of those coins that you pay the tax with, right? And they open up their wallet. Out comes the coin, the pagan coin with the image of idolatry on it. They take it out and they put it in Jesus' hand. Jesus doesn't have the coin. He doesn't have the problem with money, but they seem to have this pagan coin. So hey, Jesus, we're trying to trap you. Shall we give to Caesar or not? Oh, here's some money that Caesar has. I just happen to have it on me. Oh, really? That's interesting. Apparently you don't loathe Caesar and his idolatry so much that you would not carry that in your pocket. Not an unreasonable amount of money, by the way. It's a day's wage. So it's 100, he's carrying around 100 quid in his pocket. He's carrying around 100 quid. Now, what Jesus does here is he says, whose image is that? And that word image, it's reminding of the Old Testament. It's reminding of the 10 Commandments. Which 10 commandment would we be talking about? The second commandment says, don't make any idol in the image. That word, the image of anything under heaven. Don't make an idol and worship it. And so that's not telling us that we can never have pictures of people or artwork. It's telling us, go fall down and bow down before those things. And yet Jesus says, well, look, we have a coin, and on the coin it says, here's your God. It's an idol, and it's a man. And you guys don't have a problem with this? And he's like, look, take this ugly idol and give it back to its owner. You don't need that. Take this ugly thing, take this image of worship, and hand it back to the one it looks like. You don't need that. Very different perspective than we have about money here. The temptation is to idolize money, and Jesus says, look, this is an idol. I don't think you need this. I don't think you want it. Give it back. And look, it has Caesar's face on it, so we know it belongs to Caesar. So, hand it back to Caesar. Look, we have coins, and guess whose face is on it? The queen. Give to the queen what is hers. Give back to money the people who, that's their possession. They really did make that. Give it back. Give back your material things to the world. Eventually. Use it in its time. Give back money to the moneymakers. Give back material to the world. The Bible says we came into this world with nothing, and we're going to leave the world with nothing. All right, so before you leave the world with nothing, you can offload some of that. You don't have to wait until you're gone to have nothing. You can take some of that stuff and pass it on now. Now listen, saving money is good. It's good to save money for a rainy day. It's good to save money for retirement. It's good to save money to pay for your kid's future. Cap Financial, we run a class called Cap Financial here. And in Cap Financial, we show people the appropriate ways to use their money. The problem is when we love that money because it's our safety net, our parachute, and our salvation. When we would rather have that money than God's presence. When money is the answer, when money is the end, when money is the competing God, when money is the thing that we say, yes, I'll follow God as long as I'm rich. I'll follow God as long as he keeps me with a certain amount of economic benefits. Otherwise, no. Then there's a problem. Rich people. You know there are people rich and they are quite old. They have a huge fortune. They have no intent on offloading any of that fortune until the moment of their death. And then they open the will, and the will says, don't give any of this to my children, give it to charity. And they think they're going to be thought really noble, that they would give all that money away to charity. Listen, they didn't need any of that money sitting around in piles in their house. Why was it there? Because it is their God. They could have led just fine with much less and used that money for something eternal. And instead, it became something that kept them from trusting God. That's when money is a problem. Jesus also says here, give back due, give back honor, even in these cases where things are bad. Right? Yes, the Roman government is corrupt. Yes, they do lots of terrible, terrible things. Yes, they'll even execute you if you don't pay your taxes. This is the way they are, okay? But you can honor them, okay? It turns out that they, in fact, did print off this money, and they made this useful system for you to have a livelihood, so that instead of just handing someone some produce from the land, you hand them a coin, and then they give you back food. This is a wonderful system. It allows for everything that we see around us, and the government goes to a tremendous amount of effort to produce it, and you know what? Give them back a slot of that. Give them back some of that. That's exactly deserved. Honor them. And so, every year there are Americans, okay, it can't happen here because we auto give our taxes. We have no choice about it unless we employ ourselves, and then we have some choices. But, every year we automatically give our taxes. But in America, you have a choice. You fill out your tax form. You say, this is how much I owe you if I make this much money. And every year, cheesed off Americans, they lie because they don't want to pay. They're upset with the government, right? And they're selfish. They want to keep the money. Jesus says, render to Caesar that honor. Yeah, you can speak bad about the government. You're allowed to. I just did at the beginning of the service. Okay, I hope I'm okay with that. I hope everybody's okay with that. Okay, but you also give them honor and give them your taxes. Give what is due. But now Jesus uses this talk of paying out to speak about what we really ought to be constantly paying, and that's ourselves to God. He says, give to Caesar what is due Caesar, but make sure you give to God what is due God. And this is the image. Okay, on a note is an image, and that image is the bearer of the government. Okay, so the queen, right? She represents the government. That's why she's on the note. We have an image too. And what is our image? It's like we are the face on the bill, and we look like God because we are made in his image. Do you see what's going on here? Jesus says, you're the coin. That's what he's saying. Render to God the things that are God. Well, what do you look like? You look like someone made in the image of God. Well, Jesus is saying, you better give yourself to God. That's what I'm saying. You're made in his image. You need to give yourself completely to God. Now listen. The same way that you pay taxes, you're to pay to God continually, releasing yourself, surrendering to him, giving your heart to him, living for him. The same amount of time that you spend time paying taxes. Some of us pay a tax on our goods. Every day you buy a coffee, render to God. Every day, render yourself to God. You are made in his image. He desires you. He is zealous for you, and you owe him. Render yourself to him. 1 Corinthians 6:20, which is a great verse to memorize. Actually, the verse above that is really good too. 1 Corinthians 6:20. Do you not know that your bodies are the temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? Here it is. You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. You're not your own. You were bought with a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. You see, God created you. You belong to him. And then God paid for you in Christ if you believe in him. And you're paid for and you're bought by Christ. And so because this is the case, you are due to pay your tax, and the tax is you. Give it to God. Give your body, give your life, give your soul to God. Why? He made you. You owe him. And he loves you. So that's our message. Give what is due, especially give yourself completely to God over and over again. Let's talk about takeaways. 2 takeaways. First is let's use money for what money is meant to be used for. It's something that you use in season, okay? The Bible indicates that we struggle with cash. Let's just be honest. We struggle with money. That we are tempted to make money our idol. That even in this very moment, we would think to ourselves, if someone were to give me like 40,000 pounds, I wouldn't say no. And then I would build my life around it. We do these things. We are tempted to do these things. And it's all for an idol instead of a tool. It's not bad to have money and to use money appropriately. If you've spent time fantasizing about having a house or having this possession or that possession or having a lot more money or winning the lottery, this is something that is talking to your heart. And God would say, stop that. That will not save you. That cannot save you. Use it for a purpose. So if you've saved up a good amount for the future, if you can take care of your family and take care of their needs and that's all covered, you could use the excess of that to make your life as comfy as possible, to buy all the nice trinkets, to have the huge TV that keeps getting thinner and thinner and thinner so it just sticks to your wall like a sticker. Or you could take that money and put it into an eternal cause. Spend it on the kingdom. Listen, if you were to take some of that money and to put it into a Christian organization that takes Bibles all over the world, if you were to take that money and support a child somewhere in a third world country that has nothing, you could very well walk that person into the kingdom of God. And then you could get to have that person with you forever in paradise, instead of having an extra comfy pillow for the moments of your life. Famous true thing is that as we grow older, we save up this huge, large amount that is bigger than it really needs to be. And then, you know what? It ends up going anyway on physical ailments and all sorts of things. There's just no way to hold on to money. It's going to go. Let it go quicker. Let it go for the good of the gospel. It doesn't mean to be not prudent. If you've been given what you need for day to day and you have excess, think about taking that excess and using it for the kingdom. Second idea, pay yourself day by day into God's keeping. Pay yourself day by day. Pay your tax. Pay what is due. God wants all of you. Now, when we came to faith, if you've come to faith, you surrender to God. This is not some people go through this if they're Christians and other Christians don't go through it. We all go through this surrendering of our lives into God's keeping, where we repent of what we've done, where we say, you're in charge from now on. If you've not put God in charge of your life, if you've not put Jesus in charge of your life, we should talk. But that's what we do when we meet the Lord. But what this is telling us is that actually there's installments on that. That we're to pay this on a normal basis. We're to do these things on a normal basis. One of the things that I've been doing lately, and I mentioned this in a meeting, it's just been great. So we have to wash our hands for like 30 whole seconds. It's a real pain. Good grief. My hands are rubbing raw on this exercise, right? Okay, so you're doing this, and usually what do? You count the seconds. It's just a complete waste of time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? This is what you're doing. And then in the bathroom back here, in the water closet, the loo, in the bathroom, there's a sign that says, wash your hands and pray the Lord's Prayer. Our Father in heaven. Well, I haven't been doing that, but what I've started doing is I've started saying the pieces of the Lord's Prayer. Lord, you're in charge. I want your kingdom coming. I belong to you. Will you do your work today? You're so great. You're so lovely. Thank you for being my God. Thank you for being in charge. I need your forgiveness, Lord. I've sinned, and help me to forgive these other people who've really crossed me. And help me to be a person of forgiveness. And Lord, I do have some needs. Will you provide for them today, day by day? Will you meet my needs? I've been doing this. It's an installment payment moment, a resurrendering of our lives. And it is revolutionary to do that day by day. We're not meant to just do it once and then forget about it, move on to the deeper things. We're meant to be resubmitting every day. We're putting the due in every day. Why? Because we belong to God now, and we've got to keep our mind on it. What would how many times a week have we done this? How many times a day do we do this? It will change your life if you let it. Let's pray.